Imagine this, a single dad, fired for being 6 minutes late, humiliated in front of everyone, until a Navy helicopter crashes the party and turns his life upside down. You won't believe what happens next. The Voss Holdings tower was sterile and cold at 7 a.m. Single dad Daniel Cole, in faded maintenance overalls, rushed in, carrying his small lunchbox. Suddenly, CEO Era Voss, cold as ice, emerged, surrounded by security. Daniel accidentally brushed her shoulder. His lunchbox tumbled, shattering on the polished marble. The lobby erupted in laughter. Useless janitor. Era narrowed her eyes. You are fired immediately. Daniel froze, thinking of Lily. The glass ceiling began to tremble. A deafening rhythmic whump 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 descended. A massive Navy helicopter settled on the rooftop. An intense Navy SEAL scrambled down a stairwell, shouting into the chaos. We need to see Daniel Cole now. But hold on, how does a lowly janitor become the Navy's most wanted man? Keep watching to uncover the shocking secret from his past. Daniel Cole's life was a testament to quiet, relentless dedication. He was a single father to Lily, a bright 7-year-old girl whose smile was the only light he needed. Lily's mother Sarah had passed away suddenly from a rare illness when the child was only 2. Since that day, Daniel had carried the full weighty burden of being everything for his daughter: father, mother, protector, and sole provider. He often worked double shifts, sacrificing sleep to ensure Lily never felt the void left behind. He worked as a building maintenance technician at the prestigious Voss Holdings, a glittering cold structure built on billions. His job was a chaotic, unending mix of fixing complex HVAC systems, battling plumbing leaks in executive bathrooms, and scrubbing away the fingerprints of the wealthy. He was proficient, but his skills were dismissed because of the uniform he wore. Every dollar he earned was hard-fought, put immediately toward Lily's school fund and her infrequent yet vital doctor visits. In this opulent skyscraper environment, Daniel was chronically invisible. The high-powered silk suit executives and financial analysts, obsessed with quarterly reports and market fluctuations, saw him as an indistinct smudge, a low-caste laborer whose physical presence was necessary but whose existence was utterly irrelevant. He was the man who kept the polished chrome clean but was never allowed to touch the company's gold. He moved through the halls with a soft step, avoiding eye contact, conscious of his worn boots against the Italian marble floors. Laura Voss was the exact opposite of Daniel. She was a corporate phenomenon, the youngest CEO in the company's history. A razor-sharp intellect inherited from her industrialist father, coupled with an impenetrable icy exterior, earned her the nickname, the Glacier, among staff. She was a demanding perfectionist. She valued time, efficiency, and exponential profit above all else. Her emotional output was zero. Sentimentality, she believed, was a fatal business flaw. She had never once spoken to a janitor unless it was to issue a complaint. This morning, Daniel had left early, as usual, to prepare for his shift. But Lily had woken up with a slight fever, a persistent nagging cough that had kept him awake since 3 a.m. Nothing serious, but enough to require Daniel to spend a few extra precious minutes making sure she had her specialized medicine, her favorite stuffed penguin, and a comforting blanket. He knew the risk, but Lily came first. This small, crucial act of fatherhood cost him. He clocked in 6 minutes past the official start time, the digital clock flashing an ominous red. Era didn't care about the reasons. She didn't ask about the slight redness around his eyes from a sleepless night of worry. She stood rigid, her stance unyielding, observing the digital timer. 6 minutes late. That is a breach of the zero-tolerance punctuality clause. Section 3.1, Employee Handbook. You are terminated. Daniel, utterly crushed, pleaded softly, his voice barely audible. The shame was suffocating. Please, Miss Voss, I sincerely apologize. It was an emergency with my young daughter. I just need this job. It's all I have. She looked at him, not with malice, but with complete glacial disinterest, a look reserved for a poorly executed spreadsheet. I run a major corporation, Mr. Cole. Punctuality is the bedrock of discipline. I do not run a nursery school. Her words were precise, cutting, and delivered without any trace of human warmth or empathy. The head of security, a man named Marcus, unaware of his own impending involvement, stepped forward immediately. He reached out and, with a swift, cold yank, tore Daniel's employee badge from his shirt. The lanyard snapped, the plastic badge hitting the floor with a pathetic clatter. A ripple of mocking laughter spread through the lobby. The younger executives exchanged cruel glances, reveling in the public execution. "Guess he'll be fixing his own air conditioning now," one sneered. Daniel's cheeks flushed crimson. He dropped to his knees, his hands trembling with a mix of fury and intense humiliation, and began collecting the scattered pieces of his ruined lunch: rice, a piece of chicken, and a broken plastic container. Era didn't spare him another glance. Her business was concluded, the disciplinary action taken. She turned her back and walked toward the executive elevators, the epitome of ruthless power. But just as she reached the gleaming metallic doors, the terrifying rhythmic thump-thump-thump of the enormous helicopter blades began to vibrate the entire structure. The sound was immense, overwhelming, and utterly impossible. Voss Holdings did not have a permitted landing pad. The wind shear from the roof-mounted beast was causing the glass to strain. Security guards immediately swarmed Era, forming a protective barricade. The staff members shrieked, scattering in panic, some diving behind couches and marble columns. Then a blur of dark green uniform descended the central emergency staircase. A muscular Navy SEAL, Captain Reynolds, armed and sweating, burst into the opulent lobby. He didn't look at Era, the CEO. He didn't look at the expensive art. His eyes scanned the terrified crowd until they locked onto the man kneeling on the floor, picking up debris. The SEAL's voice was a powerful, commanding roar that cut through the terror and the chopper noise. "Daniel Cole, Chief Petty Officer Daniel Cole, we are here to retrieve you." The sound of the helicopter blades reached its peak. Daniel, the newly fired and publicly ridiculed man, stood amidst the broken glass and spilled rice. Every single eye in the shattered lobby was now fixed, not on the CEO, but on him. The invisible man was suddenly the most visible, most wanted person in the room. Era Voss, still shielded by her security detail, was finally able to speak. Her voice was sharp, fueled by outrage and a challenge to her absolute authority. "This is private property. Who authorized this landing? You are violating FAA regulations and trespassing on corporate land. I will have you arrested." The Navy SEAL, Captain Reynolds, ignored her official fury. He walked directly past the CEO, his boots crunching lightly on the shattered glass of the lunchbox, and stopped in front of Daniel. He saluted, a sharp, respectful, and entirely unexpected gesture that left everyone gasping. His voice was low and firm, designed to convey immediate command. "United States Naval Command, ma'am, we are here on official national security business, seeking one of our most critically necessary assets. Our mission supersedes local ordinances." The entire crowd, reeling from the identity shock, pointed at Daniel, still dressed in his stained coveralls. "He's right there. He was just fired. The CEO just kicked him out for being 6 minutes late." Daniel, caught between the humiliation and the overwhelming military presence, stammered, shaking his head slightly. "Captain, I truly don't know anyone in the military anymore. I haven't been in the service for years. I'm just a janitor now." Era's rage was instantly eclipsed by a penetrating, urgent curiosity. She stepped forward, ignoring her guards, the need for information overcoming her pride. "Mr. Cole, what is this? What is a chief petty officer? Why is the Navy sending a combat team in a helicopter for you?" Daniel finally met her eye, not with anger, but with a deep, private sense of regret for the life he had put on hold. He sighed, the weight of his forgotten past heavy on his shoulders. He looked every bit the tired single father, yet his eyes held an unnerving intelligence. I used to be a naval aviation engineer, Chief Petty Officer Daniel Cole. I resigned with full honors when my wife passed away. I designed and oversaw the installation of the core flight deck stabilization system on the new carrier class. The effect was instantaneous and profound. The staff who had laughed minutes ago gasped, their faces slack with shock. The executives who had treated him like dirt now stared at a man who commanded more respect in the eyes of a captain than she did. What? An aviation engineer? A system architect? A genius? Working as a janitor? One executive whispered, utterly dumbfounded. The contrast between his current job and his former title was staggering. Captain Reynolds opened a secure, classified briefcase. He produced a series of complex schematic blueprints that only a handful of people could understand. He held them up, showing Daniel the red markings. The automated flight deck and landing safety override systems, AFLOS, on the USS Roosevelt, our largest operational aircraft carrier, are experiencing a catastrophic, inexplicable failure. It's an intermittent cascade failure that defies standard protocol diagnostics. It is the system you designed, Mr. Cole. The only man in the world who understands the proprietary logic gates and the hand-coded fail-safes is you. Era Voss stared at Daniel, her composure utterly shattered. For the first time in her life, she was speechless. She saw not a low-paid janitor, but a man of immense strategic, life-saving value, a value she had callously discarded for 6 minutes. The group of former colleagues who had mocked him fell into a suffocating, unbearable silence. Their earlier contempt now curdled into acute embarrassment and self-loathing. Captain Reynolds urged Daniel, his voice carrying the gravity of the situation. "We need to go now, Chief. 3,000 lives are on board, including the top brass for the Pacific Fleet maneuvers. If the system collapses completely, the nuclear auxiliary reactor cooling system will initiate an uncontrolled shutdown sequence. The entire carrier will be dead in the water in hostile territory. The clock is ticking." Daniel stood frozen, his mind spinning. The memories of his past responsibility, the pressure, the life and death stakes, the sheer size of the responsibility, clashed violently with the fierce, protective love for his daughter. "I can't. I'm sorry. My time is done. I have to look after my little girl. I promised Sarah I would always put Lily first." Era watched him. She saw the sheer exhaustion and burden of fatherhood weighing down a true hero. She watched as the entire corporate crowd, moments ago unified in their contempt for Daniel, now fixed their hopes desperately on him. The janitor, the sales manager who had pointed at him earlier, his eyes wide with fear for his own safe world, leaned in and muttered loudly enough for everyone to hear. "The CEO just fired the one man the entire United States Navy is begging for help." Era felt a sudden, sickening, profound wave of shame wash over her. It was a raw, unfamiliar emotion that went beyond professional disappointment. She was publicly exposed as a short-sighted, cruel idiot who had prioritized 6 minutes over the life-saving potential of the man in front of her. Her empire of efficiency had just been trumped by a human being's intrinsic worth. Daniel pulled out his battered phone, looking at a crack-screen photo of Lily's smiling face. The clock was ticking. He had to decide between his quiet, safe life with his daughter and the terrifying, world-saving duty of his past. He finally looked at Captain Reynolds, his gaze firm, his choice made, not for the Navy, but for the principle of protecting others. He spoke a sentence that silenced the entire lobby, a testament to his unconditional dedication as a father. "I will go, but I need to take my daughter with me. I won't leave her alone. She comes first." Captain Reynolds nodded without hesitation, respecting the unbreakable boundary of the father. "Understood, Chief. Her safety will be our priority. We will make immediate arrangements." A second SEAL, a young woman named Lieutenant Jenna, carefully secured Lily into a miniaturized combat harness. "Come on, sweetie. You get to fly with your daddy," Jenna said warmly. She swiftly carried the child up the emergency stairs toward the roaring helicopter. Era Voss stood utterly still, watching the dramatic scene unfold. The man she had humiliated and dismissed was being escorted away by a military escort. Her heart felt heavy, weighted by the crushing realization that she had so severely misjudged a person of extraordinary caliber. She had judged him by his stained uniform, not his character. She had valued form over substance. Daniel was the last to board the massive, roaring helicopter. Lily, clutching her father tightly in the noisy cabin, managed a small, terrified whisper against the roar of the engines. "Daddy, don't let me fall out. Please!" Daniel smiled, giving her a reassuring squeeze. He put on a headset. "Never, sweetie. I'm holding on tight. It's safer than a taxi." The helicopter lifted off the rooftop, the powerful downdraft whipping Era's hair across her face on the ground below. She remained rooted, witnessing the departure of the man whose true value dwarfed her entire glass tower. The flight to the vast gray deck of the USS Roosevelt was quick and jarring. Daniel was rushed immediately into the main engineering control room, a chaotic, pressurized environment humming with stressed energy, bright monitors, and distressed officers. The air was thick with tension and the smell of ozone. The senior officers exchanged skeptical glances. "This is the genius they spoke of? The one who quit 5 years ago," one whispered. "A single dad in maintenance coveralls. He designed the entire safety skeleton." Another murmured in disbelief. Daniel ignored the chatter. He didn't waste time on introductions. He immediately took the lead, his hands flying across the keyboard of the primary diagnostic terminal. He scanned the dizzying array of diagnostic screens, the primary sensor outputs, the pressure gradients, and the coolant flow rates. His eyes, once tired, now held the intense focus of a surgeon. He sucked in a sharp, sudden breath. "This isn't random failure. The system's proprietary error log is being suppressed. The cascade is too clean." He checked the core command module's modification history. His eyes widened slightly. "Who accessed the core command code 6 hours ago? This is not a technical malfunction," he stated, his voice ringing with authority and expertise. "The failure loop was initiated manually. This is a direct internal security breach. Someone with level 5 clearance is actively trying to hide the override signature." The chief engineer, Commander Harrison, stared at Daniel in open horror. "Are you suggesting deliberate sabotage, a hack?" Daniel was already typing rapidly, bypassing the suppression code with a command he had built into the original system architecture, a digital backdoor only he knew existed. "No, the system is too complex, too physically isolated for a remote hack. Someone within the engineering team intentionally overrode the primary safety parameters and introduced a zero-day exploit designed to trigger AFDL's failure. Someone wants this system to fail." Daniel's fingers paused on the keyboard. He looked up, spotting the senior engineering analyst he had encountered in Era's lobby, the one named Marcus, the security guard from Act 1, who had recently been transferred to the Navy after being fired from VAS for internal corruption. Marcus was suddenly trying to slip out of the crowded room, his face pale and eyes darting nervously. "Marcus, stop!" Daniel shouted, his voice echoing in the metallic room. 2 junior engineers, startled, moved to block the exit. Marcus fought back, his face contorted in panic. He lunged for a fire extinguisher, desperate to escape. "If the safety system fails, the carrier is forced to halt operations. The entire Pacific Fleet is compromised." Marcus shrieked, his voice thick with desperation and venom. "The rival defense contractor paid me. They win the next multi-billion-dollar shipbuilding contract if the Roosevelt is grounded." Daniel didn't hesitate. He knew the danger of letting the saboteur escape. He reacted with quick, decisive, non-lethal moves ingrained from his naval service, learned over years of close-quarters training. With a single swift shoulder block and a clean pivot that utilized Marcus' forward momentum, Daniel disarmed and dropped him to the deck. The other officers quickly secured the panicked saboteur. Lily, watching the entire terrifying ordeal through the small reinforced window of the adjacent administrative office, gasped, clutching her stuffed penguin. But she saw her father, calm, decisive, and fully in control amidst the chaos. Her fear began to mix with a fierce, burning pride. Daniel immediately raced back to the control board, his focus absolute. "Forget the culprit. The reactor core is beginning the manual emergency shutdown sequence. We have less than 9 minutes before the auxiliary power dies and the entire flight deck loses hydraulic control." He began manually stripping out the malicious code line by line, his expertise and speed overwhelming the complex system. He was reconstructing the core architecture on the fly, a coding masterpiece. Sweat poured from his brow, dripping onto the sensitive control panel. Commander Harrison began the terrifying countdown, his voice cracking with the pressure. "Chief, 5 minutes to auxiliary shutdown. Engine core temperature climbing past red line." Then, minutes later, 30 seconds to reactor shutdown. "We are losing hydraulic pressure," Daniel yelled, his voice raw with urgency, issuing a critical power-saving command. "Cut all non-essential power. Kill the lights. Reduce thermal load to minimum." The massive control room plunged into blinding darkness. The silence broken only by the hiss of cooling vents and the frantic typing of Daniel. Only the soft, intense glow of Daniel's monitor illuminated his determined, focused face. He furiously typed the final lines of counter code. The power flickered. The emergency lights snapped back on. The system status on the main holographic display flashed a clean, steady AFDL. 100% online. All systems green. The entire control room erupted in cheers, applause, and relieved shouts. They had been saved by the man Era Voss had called a useless janitor. Admiral Hayes, the commanding officer, entered the room, his face etched with profound relief and gratitude. He walked directly to Daniel. "Chief Cole, you were the best mechanic and engineer I ever had. You are a national asset. I want you back. Full rank reinstatement. Name your terms. We will provide full-time child care, housing, anything you need." Daniel looked down at his uninjured hand, which Lily, now escorted to him by Lieutenant Jenna, was gently tracing. He saw the pride in her eyes, but also the deep, lingering fear of losing him to the ocean again. He had chosen duty, but Lily had chosen him. He looked back at the Admiral, his decision unwavering, his loyalty clear. "No, sir, I'm sorry. I just helped because I could. I had a responsibility to the system I designed. I helped because I didn't want anyone to lose their family like I lost mine." The Admiral held his gaze for a long moment, then offered a slow, profound, respectful nod. "Understood, Chief. Godspeed." As Daniel was escorted out of the engineering room to the awaiting chopper, a young officer quietly murmured, capturing the sentiment of the moment. "He's the kind of man the world doesn't deserve. He cares more about lives than titles." The massive Navy helicopter, silent now, returned Daniel and Lily to the Voss Holdings Tower late that afternoon. The scene in the lobby was dramatically different. The employees were no longer scattered or laughing. They stood in two neat, silent rows, a spontaneous, respectful guard of honor that stretched from the elevator bank to the main security desk. Their eyes, once filled with professional indifference or contempt, were now wide with awe, respect, and a hint of shame. The invisible man had returned as a visible, undisputed hero. Era Voss stood alone in the center of the reception area, stripped of her corporate armor. She was dressed impeccably as always, but her face was softer, devoid of its usual icy mask. Her shoulders were slightly slumped, a subtle sign of the weight of her regret. Daniel stepped off the elevator, Lily clinging to his side. The crowd remained silent, waiting for Era to speak. Era approached Daniel, her movements hesitant, uncertain. She spoke softly, her voice carrying a fragile vulnerability Daniel had never heard. She didn't apologize for the firing, but for the judgment. "Mr. Cole, I am deeply sorry. I was completely wrong about you. I judged your worth based on your pay grade, not your capacity. I apologize for my arrogance." Daniel nodded gently, accepting the apology without bitterness or malice. He understood her struggle with pride. "It's all right, Ms. Voss. No harm was done, and the crisis was averted." Era looked down at Lily, who was peering up at the intimidating CO. Era offered the child a genuine, tentative smile. She crouched down slightly, a foreign, awkward movement for her. "Would you like some hot chocolate in my office, Lily? The cocoa powder is imported from Switzerland, and I have small marshmallows." Lily's eyes widened, a smile instantly cracking through her tiredness. Yes, please. With extra marshmallows. Era stood, taking Lily's small hand in hers, and led the girl away, moving past the astonished crowd. She led them into the executive suite, leaving Daniel momentarily stunned. The CEO, the glacier, was holding a little girl's hand, exhibiting a kindness she had never shown a colleague or even a business partner. Daniel slowly followed them into the vast, silent CEO's office. In the office filled with minimalist art and expensive leather, Era watched Lily happily sip her hot chocolate before turning back to Daniel. I have something to discuss, Mr. Cole. Daniel, expecting a handsome severance package or bonus, nodded. Yes, Miss Voss. Do you want your old job back? She asked without pretense. Daniel paused, sitting on a designer couch. I need employment, Miss Voss. I need to provide for my daughter, but I refuse to work anywhere where I am seen as worthless or invisible. Era walked to the floor-to-ceiling window, looking out over the sprawling, cold city. Then work directly with me. I've already spoken to the board. I'm creating a new dedicated department, Director of Technical Safety and Integrity. You will oversee all critical systems, not just the plumbing. You will report only to me. Daniel was genuinely bewildered. Me? But, I don't have the internal corporate paperwork for that. I was a Navy engineer. Era turned back, her voice firm, resolute. You just saved 3,000 American sailors, secured a $100 billion military asset, and foiled a foreign industrial sabotage attempt. Your former job at the Navy made you a national hero. Your competence is beyond reproach. I trust you to save this company too. We need your integrity. She looked at him for a long, revealing moment, her gaze no longer judging, but seeking a connection, a lesson. She spoke quietly, a confession that finally broke the last piece of ice surrounding her CEO persona. I want to learn how to see people, Daniel. I want to learn how to look past the uniform and see the true human potential and worth beneath it, just like you showed me. 1 month later, the Voss Holdings atmosphere was subtly, profoundly changed. Daniel Cole was no longer the janitor. He was the Director of Technical Integrity, a respected pillar of the company, his office adjacent to the CEO's suite. He implemented complex military-grade security protocols, and his decisions were never questioned. The staff now treated him not just with respect, but with profound gratitude and deference. Lily was a frequent visitor after school. Her bright laughter and small crayon-drawn pictures softened the hyper-efficient executive wing. She often sat at the immense CEO desk drawing pictures of helicopters and flowers, bringing unexpected warmth to a space long frozen by relentless ambition. One late afternoon, Daniel and Era were reviewing a new security audit. You know, Era, Daniel said, using her first name naturally. You've genuinely changed. Era smiled, a rare, gentle, and complex expression that transformed her face. You and Lily forced me to change, Daniel. You showed me the difference between paper value and human value. I realized how small my world was before you interrupted it. That evening, Daniel was packing up to take Lily home. Era stood in the doorway of her office, dressed down in casual trousers and a soft sweater, something unheard of. Daniel, Lily, would you like to have dinner with me tonight? I ordered takeout from the great Italian place downtown. Daniel was taken aback by the personal invitation. This was far beyond a professional boundary. Why, Miss Voss? Why do you want to have dinner with us? You have board meetings. Era looked down at Lily, who was happily swinging her small legs from the executive chair, clearly enjoying the company. She spoke with a vulnerable honesty that would have been unthinkable a month prior. Because when you two are around, Daniel, I don't feel quite so empty anymore. You bring life back into this glass cage. Lily slid off the chair and ran to Era, wrapping her small arms around the CEO's leg. Then you're our family now. You can be my new auntie. Era froze for a fraction of a second, the title, auntie, hitting her unexpectedly, then broke into a spontaneous, deep, genuine laugh, hugging the small girl back, a moment of pure, unexpected joy, a human connection she had never allowed herself. Her cold exterior had finally melted away, replaced by the warmth of unexpected affection. Daniel and Lily left the tower together. Daniel carried Lily's backpack. Era carried Lily's latest drawing, a stick figure of the three of them holding hands. And Lily held both their hands, skipping happily. Under the cool glow of the street lights, three figures walked away: a quiet mechanic who became a hero, a humbled CEO who learned empathy, and a brave little girl, a new, unlikely family walking into the city night, having found connection where destiny had initially only offered conflict. If you believe stories like this, stories of quiet courage, undeniable truth, and profound human change, deserve to be told, leave a comment and subscribe to my stories.